So my name is Ash Patel. I work for Annexter Center. We're a not-for-profit organization that manages healthcare for people who are underserved in the Chicago area. So we deal with mental health illness. We deal with people who are deaf, blind. And again, it's not-for-profit organization just in Chicago.
Okay. So, I mean, I imagine that, through the course of that, you deal obviously with sensitive information, things like that. Like, is that part of your role and your purview, or is that somebody else's purview?
So, as the CAO for Annexter, it is part of my preview with regards to HIPAA, with regards to PHI. So we definitely take those aspects very seriously. We get audited as well for the state and through the federal government.
Mhm.
So we need to make sure that those types of situations are managed and we really limit any of our exposure to personal health care information.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, and it's interesting, right? If I think back through the different relationships that we've built with customers in the past, just sort of over the years, typically there's some sort of moment or impending event. It could be a board member or a board conversation at the board level. It could be as the executive looking at how do we improve, how do we get better, how do we drive transformation inside of the organization. There's always some sort of impending event that occurs, right? That causes you to start looking for a solution. So I'm kind of curious, like, what was that impending event for you guys? Like, what brought you to us? What was that impending event?
Yeah, so we know that this environment is always changing. There's always new technology coming in, and one of the big things that drive us is actually efficiency and cost savings. We're always try to be as efficient as we can, try to reduce costs as much as we can, and with Evolve, we actually got in touch with Evolve through a third party vendor called Stratosphere. So they're a great organization, a great company for me to utilize because I just come up to them and say, hey, this is what we are doing right now. Is there something better in the industry, or is there something better that we should be doing that's more in line with what is considered best practices? And then they come back and say, hey, Ash, this is what's the trend. This is where the technology is going. This is where potential cost savings can be achieved. And they obviously recommended Evolve. And they were actually a partner of Evolve for our current phone system. So when we wanted to look at, reducing costs with, desk phones, because most of our users are now hybrid. We don't really need desk phones anymore. We really want to start utilizing more of the features that are built around Teams, Microsoft Teams, and Dialer is one of those things. So they'd reach out and say, hey, you're already with Evolve. Evolve's a great partner to talk to about implementing Teams Dialer. And there's some potential savings there too, because then we can, not have to worry about licensing desk phones that are mostly not being used at all.
So that's interesting, right? Were we the only vendor that they brought up as a solution for you, or did they give you other options?
They gave us other options, but one thing that led us to Evolve is that we're currently a vendor of yours, or a partner of yours, and our current experience has been pretty positive on the PBX side. So for us, it made sense to, hey, let's continue that partnership. Let's work on that relationship. Those numbers that we have are already part of Evolve's infrastructure. So for us to transition to Teams, the transition will be a lot simpler. Evolve already knows our network, they know our environment. Again, it just makes things a lot simpler and easier. And we've already had past experiences with Evolve, so it's not like really want to invent the wheel and say, hey, let's try with another vendor who probably could probably do the same thing. But if we're happy with Evolve, then why would we want to look at changing things up?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? Switching costs, the process to go through not just dollars and cents, but also the soft costs, right? Retraining, etc. What do you sort of, if I think about, your relationship, I'm sure there's some sort of governance, a board, trustees, etc. Right? That you have, that you're working with, communicating with, reporting to, and like when you think about your costs as an organization, when you think about dollars going out, you're all, especially in this economy, right? Everybody's scrutinizing sort of every line item. What do you point to as sort of that measurable success, that since working with Evolve IP to today, and that could be things like more efficiency, lower TCO. It could be, more capability, tying it all together, right? So I'm just kind of curious, like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think those are all great examples, and I kind of look at that in that way. And it's like, is this the right thing to do? Because are we saving money? Are we improving things? Are we, getting more from from where we are now? And those are all conversations that the board is very interested with, so that we can show them that we're being responsible, we're being, forward thinking, and trying to do our best to kind of continue to move Annixter in that direction of being modernized and kind of being in touch with the times and staying relevant, which is a big thing. I mean, we can easily fall into a trap of like just maintaining what we're doing and continue as is, but there's opportunities there that we would be missing out on. And for us, especially post COVID, with our environment changing so much, with most of our workers now, admin staff anywhere, working in a hybrid solution, this change made the perfect sense, because we have a lot of our users that are working hybrid that are using their personal devices to make calls, which really is something I don't like them to do, because it just becomes harder in people getting a hold of somebody, contacting them on their personal cell phone or whatever. So that's why we really want to push on, hey, listen, we're using Teams as chat, we're using Teams to help manage, sharing documents and collaborating. So the next logical step is to get the dial component part of it. Everyone already uses Teams; they're familiar with it. It's already on their laptop, so it's not like any additional software that we need to buy. And it allows us to kind of provide them a work number that they can freely use and distribute out, so they don't have to worry about somebody having their personal number, and then if they leave the organization, then what do we do? Like that client, that tenant only has that number to contact their clinician, and if they're not working for Annixter anymore, then it becomes okay. What happens to that number? So this made the perfect sense to kind of solve a lot of problems that we're having right now.
So it gives you that continuity, right, from you know uh, your POCs, over time,
Right.
obviously, as they sort of um, go through, just so the natural evolution of either contractors or employees, right? They,
Correct.
over time, everybody is going to transition in, they're going to transition out, and having that continuity with your customer, is key. So that's interesting, right? So a different question, somewhat related, but if you think about, um, what you sort of point to, like what do you point to? Is it, you're a small fish in a big pond, or you're not a small fish in a big pond, or is it sort of, do you point to the level of care you get, the level of urgency, when you have a support issue, or the tech depth that we go into? Like, what do you sort of point to as like the one thing that you're uh, happy with, as you're thinking through your relationship with us?
I think the level of service I think it's been great. We've got an account rep that's accessible. The engineers and the program managers that have been assigned to us have been very, very good. So in that way, we feel that we're getting the attention that we need. I know that other organizations a lot bigger than us, you know, may get more attention and may get more priority, but for us, we feel as if we're treated the same. And especially for our industry, I mean, we are a small fish, but we have very demanding requirements, especially when we're dealing with people's health care and health well-being. So for us, we really need to make sure we have a solution that people can contact us, can connect to us, and if there's a problem, we can get rectified and resolve it fairly quickly.
Yeah. So it was funny. I was talking to somebody the other day, and in a conversation sort of like this one, and the way he answered that question is he said, "You know what? The fact that we don't know that you guys exist is the best thing and the
Right,
most valuable, right? Is you work in the background. You work like a utility. Like when we pay our electricity bill, we want to think about that like, Evolve IP, where, we're paying the bill and, everything is just working smoothly, almost like a utility. Right. And I thought that was an interesting perspective, as he was thinking through, like where's the value? The value is actually, that just things just work, right? They're
right,
smooth and there's fast resolution if there is any issue, things like that, because you've got a business to run, right? And like, that's I think as an executive, that's probably where, your mind is like, look, I got a business to run. I've got to focus on growth. I got to focus on retention. I've got to focus on those things. I don't want to be thinking about, infrastructure. So
right. I
that's
mean, in my industry, surprises are not a good thing. So for us, it's great when we have some consistency and we have some level of reliability in that. I mean, I use the example sometimes, like when I go into my car, I expect to that it starts when I hit the start button. So and that's where I think Evolve falls in there. That when I come in the office or I start up Teams, I know that the dialer will work and that reliability is there.
great. All right. So last question, and this is kind of the fun question. The You mentioned earlier in our conversation, you're always trying to stay up on technology. You're trying to stay up on because it moves very quickly, and you want to stay current. I think is the word you used. So, where do you get that information from? Do you get it from podcasts? Do you get it from colleagues? Do you get it from research firms like Gartner? Like, where do you typically get information to stay up on current trends?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, there are different sources that funnel into that. I mean, it's just my own internet, searching. There's various publications that I get articles out of and say, hey, this is actually interesting. Sometimes it's just having conversations with my team on the IT side because they're usually very well versed on what's going on. And then my work with Stratosphere also is a big part of that too, because having scheduled cadence calls with them just to say, hey, what's going on? What do you guys see? What partners do you have that maybe we can look at? And they do a lot of the vetting and say, hey, this is kind of a trendy thing that's happening. We don't think it's going to really pan out in the long term. Just there's so many other things that are going to be barriers. So we probably would kind of let this wave ride. But there are other options, other opportunities, especially in the cybersecurity area, that they will kind of give me some suggestions, and then from there, we would decide on, hey, let's explore that because we do see that as a risk for us, or that's something that we should think about doing because our current situation, we don't really have factored that because the bad guys have changed their tactics and stuff like that. So There are a lot of different ways information flows, and it's just sometimes good to have other sources within my team and outside my team to kind of run things by and kind of just say, hey, look, what do you think? And then there are always these seminars and sometimes on site um, forums that are set up that you can go to attend to and get a lot of information from different vendors.
That's great. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I had one last question. So you made me think of something. So there was a point where you know Stratosphere came to you and said this makes sense, right? You know, here's a Revolve IP. Even before um, you picked up the additional capabilities. I'm just kind of curious, like what was life like before, right? In other words, like why did you go to Stratosphere in the first place? Why did you pick up the phone and call them? Like what was the problem that you were trying to solve?
So Stratosphere was a vendor that we used at my previous organization, and they were already in place at the time. So as I took on the role there, the outgoing IT manager had introduced me to them, and we had a conversation, and I really liked what they brought to the table. They came off as like a completely agnostic provider, so they didn't care what solution or what vendor. They weren't trying to pitch one over the other. They were just like, hey, this is the problem that you're trying to solve. This is the research that we've found and other partners that we've utilized, and the successes are been with them on this vendor or this solution. So it felt like there was no real sales pitch pressure that, hey, you need to use this vendor, right? It's like if I went to Cisco, they will be pitching Cisco products, right? So with Stratosphere, it's great because I can just go, hey, this is a solution that we need. And they would come up and say, hey, you can look at vendor A, B, C, D. And they're all great vendors. We all have great relationships with them. We can help work with, on getting, POCs, getting like pricing, get the whole RFP process. They'll manage all of that. So it really took a lot of time off of my hands to say, okay, I trust them. And so far, they've been pretty good with regards to the recommendations.
Got it. That's super helpful. I appreciate that additional color. Um, so Ash, it was great talking to you. I appreciate it. I know sometimes when you get on these kinds of conversations, you don't know which way it's going to go. But I really appreciate the feedback, the candor, and sort of the unvarnished experience that you've had. So thank you for doing that.